and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 379, and today's date is June 1st, 2014, and the title of this episode is the U.S. Preparing a Full Military Strike in Libya? Well, we need to take a look at the full picture here. What has been happening? And we know across the world, the United States central bankers are completely losing control of every single area. In Ukraine, the plan didn't go the way they wanted to. They wanted the full entire country of Ukraine. They wanted to put it on NATO. They wanted to have the resources. They wanted to have the production. They wanted to put them on the EU system. Completely fallen apart. And what do they have there? Well, they have a complete mess, and they only have the West, and they're in a continuous fight with the Southeast. And this newly elected puppet regime is the exact same puppet regime that was there before. They have not let up on any of the anti-terrorism forces. They are continuing with what they're doing. And if we look in the Middle East, what do we see there? Well, we're seeing the people rise up. They are fighting back, and they want their countries back. They are having a huge problem in Libya, and we've discussed this many times in past reports, that the Libyan people, which of course the United States government, central bankers calls them Al-Qaeda, they call them the terrorists, but it is the people. They want their country back. They are continually holding the oil ports. They're not giving those up. They're pushing the government back and back. It looks like the United States sent in this renegade general in there that worked with the CIA to remove Gaddafi, to cause havoc there. And what do we see? We see the United States putting up alerts. They're putting up travel advisories. They brought an assault ship off the coast of Libya with 1,000 Marines. They also have a launch pad in Italy to get into Libya. And now we're seeing other countries saying, you know what, we're calling back our people from Libya. Because what do we expect to happen here? We expect the United States, most likely NATO, UN, all to go into Libya and completely maintain control and give back the country back to the puppet regime, because they do not want the people of this country taking over, because they won't abide by the private West central bankers. They will not sell the oil using the US dollar, and this is their biggest fear. Now, if they can do it and they completely take back their country, guess what's going to happen? Iraq is going to see this, Lebanon is going to see this, Yemen is going to see this, and it is going to give each one of these countries hope. And if these countries have hope that one other country can do it, they're going to look and say, you know what, we can do it also. We can do this, and we can take back our country. And this is a nightmare situation for the central bankers. They do not want this to happen. They need to keep everything propped up just the way it is, so they can get some type of major war started to cover up this entire collapse. And this is what they've been trying to do. They know this system cannot be maintained. They realize it, they understand it, and this is why they've been doing what they're doing. And this is why you see all the hot points around the world, the flashpoints of provoking each one of these countries. And of course the players are all the same. They have not changed one bit. It is every single country that does not have a private West central bank, because they are the enemy of the central bankers. And when we look here in the United States, and of course in Europe and other countries that are controlled by the private Western central bankers, we see that everything is starting to fall apart in these countries. Debts are skyrocketing, austerity on the people, unemployment on the people. People are making them harder and harder to survive. They can't even make ends meet. It's getting very difficult. Most of the people in Europe and Greece are dealing on the black market. Here in the United States, we're seeing prices rise now. It's rising pretty darn fast. I mean, just the other day, I went in to buy Florida's natural orange juice, and I see it went from $5.70, and it's the bigger one. It's not the half gallons, it's the bigger one, from $5.79 all the way up to $6.49. That is a huge leap, and we're starting to see this on services and other goods. The devaluation of the dollar has begun, and we can see it. It's happening right in front of us. And of course now the Fed and the government, they're all saying, yeah, there could be a little bit of inflation. We're starting to see it now, and it's really starting to hit people's pocketbooks, their wallets, and it's making it harder for them to go out and buy the things they need because, of course, as we see it and as we know, salaries aren't going up. They're actually going down. And actually, those people who are underemployed, they're making less money. And now with inflation, it's going to make it harder and harder. And again, all these countries around the world, if Libya succeeds in pushing out the government and taking back the country, and these other countries decide, you know what, they could do it, we could do it, we're going to see a lot of countries start to drop the dollar. They've been dropping it now, and all of a sudden you're going to see the reserves being scaled down, and then they'll be spending and using currency or gold or whatever to purchase the natural resources, and the valuation of the dollar is going to decrease. We're going to see the dollar devalued. Things here are going to get very expensive, and we're seeing the beginning stages of this right now. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we see that Greece now is going to take on another $4.6 billion in aid. And again, the IMF is loaning them this money. We understand this is not going to help Greece whatsoever. Actually, it's going to make the problem even worse. And this is a really hard thing because they're getting this influx of money. Of course, there's austerity along with it, and this is going to go to all the government programs and what they need to keep operating, but the people are going to feel the brunt of this. Now they're into $4.6 billion more worth of debt. This situation is really going to get out of control. And ever since the IMF has been in Greece trying to help them, we do not see anything of the kind. Greece has completely fallen apart since that time period. Now in Spain, we see a 500% rise in long-term unemployment. Spain, now there is 1.26 million people who have been jobless since 2010. And the long-term unemployment rate has risen by more than 500% since 2007. What does that tell you? Whatever they're doing is having the opposite effect, and they realize it because they are confiscating the wealth from these countries. They know this whole system is at the end game. They're taking the wealth, giving them this ridiculous paper and ink, letting them use it for the people, telling them that, you have to make the people suffer, you need more austerity, and this is not helping out. We're seeing Germany's having problems, UK's having problems, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, it's all starting to happen. And right now, Siemens, they just made an announcement, and it's scaring people, and they made this announcement on Friday that they might have to cut around 11,600 people on this new restructuring program that they're doing, and people are worried for their jobs. Now, it's being reported that U.S. consumer spending fell for the first time in a year in April. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to continue to fall. It's going to continue to fall. You know why? Because people don't have the money. We see inflation now, and the dollar is devaluing. We see that people are getting laid off. Their unemployment's going to run out, their severance is going to run out, and we're going to see less and less spending because, again, people do not have the disposable income. They cannot make ends meet, and they don't seem to understand this. Retail is having a tough time making it a go through this entire summer, and it's going to completely fall apart just like real estate. We're in this hot season, and it's not that hot for the real estate market, and this is going to completely fall apart as time goes on. Now, of course, the corporate media is out there, and they're saying, well, this is the beginning of a recovery, and we see a little bit of inflation, but don't worry, this is how the recovery starts. No, this is the way the complete collapse starts. When people stop spending and inflation hits, doesn't get any better. It gets worse as time goes on. And when we come out of these summer months, it's going to be horrific. It's going to be awful. The real estate market, the hot season will be over. We're going to go through this summer months where retail really doesn't do that well. It is going to be awful. But, of course, the corporate media is completely playing this up. Now, what we're seeing, and a lot of banks are reporting this, is that people don't have the cash. They don't have the jobs they had. They still own their homes, and they're trying to take out home equity lines of credit. And we saw this back in 2006, 7, and 8, where people took this and they used it to support themselves through this period. And we're seeing the same thing happen now, but it's actually worse because they're underemployed. They're not making the same amount of money. Inflation is starting to hit. They're not getting the raises they actually need to fight this inflation. And the Wall Street Journal right now is reporting that home equity lines of credit had increased at 8% rate year over year in the first quarter of 2014. It is getting very hard for people to make ends meet, and some lenders are even bringing back the piggyback loan, which serve as a second mortgage and cover part or all of the traditional 20% down payment when purchasing a house. Piggybacks nearly vanished during the mortgage crisis, and now they are back. What does this tell you? The real estate market is in a heap of trouble. They can't get people to take out mortgages to support this real estate market. And those hedge fund and investment companies, they are purchasing these houses in cash, and they are just holding on to them. And if they can rent them, so be it. If they can't, just hold them, trying to drive the prices up. And this is the hot season of real estate, and it's completely falling apart. And they are trying anything they possibly can right now. 5% down, 3% down, piggyback loan, trying to give loans to the subprime people, adjustable rate mortgage, anything they possibly can do, this is what they're doing. Now, it seems like Jay Carney resigned. Why? Not really sure, but when people start to resign, that means something is about to happen, or they don't want to be investigated about something. I mean, we saw Hillary Clinton resigned because of the Benghazi fiasco, and now Jay Carney, of course, he's out there lying for Obama, and it's probably something that's coming down right now, and he doesn't want to be a part of it, and he probably said, I had enough, and that's it, and we'll have to see what plays out coming up in the next couple of weeks here. Now, here are some of the myths of Obamacare. And you know, we talk a lot about Obamacare. It is completely not for the people. It is a cash grab. This is not to help the people with health insurance whatsoever. But myth number one, if you like your health plan, you can keep it. Despite President Obama's promise that if you like your plan, you can keep it, about 6 million people have already been notified by insurance companies that their policies are being canceled. One expert estimates that the law will cause more than 15 million people to lose their individual insurance by the end of 2014. Businesses were supposed to be allowed to keep their employee coverage. The term the government uses for this is grandfathered. The truth is that few small businesses' health plans will be grandfathered in. And what does this mean? That these people will have to go out to the exchanges. Here's another myth. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Many health plans sold in the exchanges offer very narrow networks with a limited choice of doctors. For example, 70% of California physicians are not in covered California exchange plan networks. The Association of American Medical Colleges predicts a shortfall of 21,000 primary care physicians in 2015. Here's another myth. There is an employer mandate to offer affordable coverage. If an employer has fewer than 50 full-time workers, he or she is not required to offer health benefits. There is a mandate for a larger employer to offer health benefits. However, they do not have to cover spouses or pay for dependents. Most importantly, they have an incentive to offer benefits that will be unaffordable to many workers. So these people will only have to pay for the worker. The rest will have to go to the exchanges. Again, this is not going to work out well for the everyday American. It's going to cut into their budget. They're going to be paying a lot more for their health insurance. And as we know, this health insurance is not cheap. And we discussed this before. Myth number one, the Affordable Care Act. There's nothing affordable about it. The deductibles are very high. The premiums are getting ready to skyrocket, and a lot of people who purchased these health plans have paid double or triple of what they were paying before. So this whole thing is completely falling apart. It is not for the people, and if it truly was, and I've said this many times, Congress, the government officials would have taken this plan. They wouldn't have been exempt, and when this thing was rolled out, they would have sat in front of the corporate media and said, look, I'm signing up for my Obamacare. But guess what? They didn't. And now what they are seeing is that hardly anyone went ahead and took these plans. And again, the youth didn't dive into it like they thought, because you have to remember 80% of those people coming out of college can't even find work, and this is the last thing on their mind. Now, the Social Security is threatening to close all field offices. Bureaucrats are mulling closure of the most SSA's more than 1,000 community field offices in the U.S., where 43 million people sought services last year. Now, the question is, why would they be closing Social Security? Well, we have to remember there's really no money left in the Social Security fund. They replaced it during the Clinton years with Treasury bonds so they could use the money for other things, and this is why during the Clinton years they told us that, everything's great, we have tons of money. No, they just took it from the Social Security fund, and now they replaced it with Treasury bonds. And what are these Treasury bonds really worth? Well, after the system collapses, they're going to be worth absolutely nothing. So are they closing these offices to protect themselves from when things go bad, when they cannot pay Social Security? They don't have to worry about it, and the people start wondering, going, what's going on here? And they're closing them so there's no riots, there's no one out there where they can go to complain about why this is happening. And this might be why this is happening at this time. Now, we understand that the United States, the U.S. government, the central bankers, the elite, the globalists, they have one thing on their mind. Well, a couple things, but one of them is to get rid of all the rights of the citizens. They do not want us having this pesky Constitution, Bill of Rights. They do not want the people armed, and this is why we've been seeing a lot of these mass shootings, and every time there's a mass shooting, they always come back to those pending bills, the Dianne Feinstein gun bill, the UN Arms Treaty gun bill, and you need to remember that President Obama has created all the executive orders that back up these two bills. And we're seeing that U.S. lawmakers are moving to boost funding of the national background check system for firearm sales, a small but symbolic step toward broader gun law reform following the recent mass shootings. The measure would provide about $19.5 million to help states submit records to a federal database. Now, are they doing the same thing as Common Core, where they're saying, listen, we'll give you millions of dollars if you help us out and help us create this federal database, and you supply all the money? Because this is what happened in Common Core. They went to all the states and they said, listen, we will give you $1 million and funding if you agree to join up with Common Core. And of course, they didn't even have the rules of Common Core. They haven't even created Common Core, but all the states went, oh yeah, of course, Common Core, that sounds right. And it seems like they're doing the same thing for the background checks. They're throwing out money to the states, and of course the states need as much money as they possibly can, because you have to remember those state income tax revenues coming in have been falling, so they need money from other places. And of course they'll say, you know what, we'll take this money to help you with the federal database, and we'll supply all the information that you need. And we can see this all falls into place with all the executive orders that President Obama created. Okay, now we understand that DHS, NSA, the government pretty much, has been spying on every single American, and I've been saying this for quite a while. And right now, the NSA is collecting millions of images per day, including about 55,000 facial recognition quality images, which translate into tremendous untapped potential. While once focused on written and oral communication, the NSA now considers facial images, fingerprints, and other identifiers just as important to its mission of tracking suspected terrorists and other intelligence targets. I wonder what those other intelligent targets are, because we know they're not looking for terrorists. Yes, they're looking for domestic terrorists. They're looking for those people who are a threat to their authority, and this all feeds into them creating and correlating all the information to create social profiles on every single person. And the NSA has accelerated its use of facial recognition technology under the Obama administration. And here's some of the data that they look at when they collect this information. Familia, individual sex, height, heat signature, genetic markers, voice print, blood group, language, recreational drugs you've been taking, medical devices, hair chemical profile, race, handwriting, biographical, or your address, educational, employment, military service, family, spouse, contextual, behavioral, financial, public records, licenses, personal pattern, commercial transaction, associates, property, vehicle VINs, tastes, preferences, ATM usage, tax records, credit rating. So you can see what they're doing. This is a complete social profile on every single person, and they're ramping this up. Why? Because they realize this collapse is coming and they need more data to create their list. They need to have those lists so they understand who's going to be a threat, who you're dealing with, who you're friends with. Are they part of a group? And we saw this in Ukraine. And who's controlling the junta in Ukraine? Yes, you got it, United States central bankers. They went to the local law enforcement and said, give us those lists of those people who might be a threat to our puppet regime. The local police handed those lists over to the anti-terrorism forces. We are going to see the same thing here. And why do we know this? Because the local law enforcement is now in compliance with DHS. DHS, along with the NSA, have been spying on every single American person, putting together these social profiles. Now, the FBI plans to have 52 million photos in their facial recognition database by 2015. Guess what's hidden in the immigration bill? A national biometric database for citizens. Moving along, the public faces another sinister and unacceptable invasion to our privacy. A national financial database is being planned, which would contain the most intimate details of our entire financial lives. It may apply to as many as 227 million Americans. So they are continuing with this spying. This has not stopped, and they're not going to stop. Just like in Ukraine, when everyone said, "Oh, look, they have the new elections. Oh, look, they're not going to push forward with the anti-terrorism forces." Yes, they are. They realize, and I'm talking about the central bankers, U.S. government. They realize we're at the end game here. They need all this information. They need this information to be sent out to all the branches of DHS and to the local law enforcement. They need to be ready for what is coming, and this is why they're ramping this up right ahead right now. Now, we understand the United States government has been using drone attacks on people in Yemen, in Libya, in Iraq, in Lebanon, and they're continuing with the drone attacks. And of course, there were hearings, and the Justice Department, promised that they were going to hand over the list, and now they went back on this promise. They are not handing over the list. They're not having it. Not even the partially redacted version. They're not doing any of it right now because the list is going to implicate of exactly what they've been really doing. They've been firing on the people who have been fighting for their country. There are no terrorists. There are no terrorist guidelines that they use. If this group of people are looking to take back the country, they're just considered terrorists, and they're firing on all those people, their families, everyone. It doesn't make a difference. Just like in Ukraine, those people of Ukraine were everyday Ukrainian citizens. As soon as they didn't agree with the puppet regime, the United States central bankers, they were all called terrorists, and the anti-terrorism force was created. The same thing's happening in the Middle East, and they do not want these documents handed over because it would show exactly what they're really doing over in the Middle East. Now, Russia is inviting Argentina to the BRICS summit. Foreign Minister Hector Timmerman met in Moscow with the Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, who confirmed a formal invitation to Argentina to take part in a BRICS summit to be held in Brazil next month. So you can see the BRIC nations are building up their group, and most of the BRIC nations now are starting to completely bypass the dollar at this time. The German Foreign Intelligence Agency is planning to spy on social media right now in real time. The German Foreign Intelligence Agency, BND, reportedly plans to expand its digital espionage operations, according to several German media outlets. From the confidential files from the spy agency indicated plans to access social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter in real time. This year, the BND intends to improve its technological methods in order to be able to systematically analyze blogs, online forums, portals such as Flickr, Facebook, and Twitter. And why do you think they're doing this? Well, they're trying to do the same thing the United States is trying to do. Find out what people are talking about. Find out if they're against the government, they're for the government, against central bankers, and they're creating their social profiles. This is what this spying is all about. Now, in South Korea, leaders say North Korea risks a regional nuclear domino if it makes good on its threat to detonate another atomic device. Now, this is all provoking. They're saying, if you go ahead and detonate another nuclear device in your country, well, that's a direct threat to South Korea. No, they're provoking another. A country can do whatever they want inside their country. If they wanted to detonate a nuclear device, they can detonate a nuclear device. United States does it all the time. Russia does it all the time. And again, here, this is all about provoking. And this goes on to say that North Korea would effectively be crossing the Rubicon if they were to conduct another nuclear test. And this is coming from the South Korean president. And they're continually demonizing all these countries that are not a private Western central bank countries, and we can see this happening. We even have U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel out there, and he's out there saying that China has taken destabilizing unilateral actions asserting its claim in the South China Sea. Now they're pushing the provoking with China right now. They're having Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, all coming together, and they're all out there. And of course, they have to come out, the United States central bankers have to come out and just push it along a little bit more, just to demonize and to provoke China into doing something. But China realizes that this is what's going on, but they're going to continually do this because in the American eyes, they want to demonize China and make it look like China's the enemy, Russia's the enemy, North Korea's the enemy, Syria, Iran, and the rest of the BRIC nations. They are all enemies of the central bankers. Now, France looks like they're going to expand their presence in the Sahel region with special ops base in Djibouti. And again, we also understand the United States signed a lease in Djibouti to be a launching pad into Africa. It looks like France is sharing in with this, and France will strengthen its military presence in Africa, and it will play a major role in this strategy by hosting the next French base. It is a detachment of the Special Operations Command. The base in Djibouti will allow France to consolidate its presence in the region and improve its ability to respond to Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab in the African regions. And of course, we understand that France is in Mali because they need the gold to give back to Germany. And this is why they are there. They are capturing the natural resources in the African regions. And wherever China is, that's where the private Western central bankers, United States government, is going to be. If they're in Nigeria, they got to be in Nigeria. If they're in Chad, they got to be in Chad. If they're in Niger, they got to be in Niger. If they're in Sudan, that's where they got to be. And we can see every place China is, that's where the United States is. Now, in Thailand, it looks like this general that completely overthrew the Senate and the acting puppet regime is really still part of the United States acting puppet regime. He's continually using dictatorship approaches toward the protesters, continually pushing them down, and it seems like it's not getting better for those people who want their country back. Sunday, nearly 6,000 police and soldiers were being sent to central Bangkok, and rapid deployment units are prepared to halt protests that might take place elsewhere, and they're continually doing this. Looks like things have not gotten better. The United States just pushed this agenda forward and had this general create a complete dictatorship type of role in the country, so they don't have to worry about voting, they don't have to worry about laws, and this is what it looks like at this time. Now, Barack Obama, he is out there. He's visiting Poland, Belgium, France this week, and Obama is pressing the European leaders this week to keep up pressure on Russia over its threatening moves in Ukraine, while seeking to relieve the fears from Poland and other NATO allies that the West could slip back into a business-as-usual relationship with Moscow. And of course, this is not going to happen. They're going to continually demonize, they're going to continually push Russia, and of course they're saying, oh, look, Russia's not, they're backing off a little bit. They've never backed off or done anything. They've never swooped in with thousands upon thousands of troops into Crimea. There was a referendum. Countries from around the world took a look at what was going on, and that it was okay and legal. It was very peaceful, and they voted to be separate and apart. The same thing happened in Donetsk and in Kharkiv and Slavansk. But of course, the United States central bankers are looking at this saying, well, we're not going to be just left with the west of Ukraine. That's absolutely ridiculous. At least get the southeastern section, and this is why they're continuing with the anti-terrorism forces. And we have to remember the forces that are inside Ukraine are not Ukraine military. They're paid mercenaries, and they are doing the dirty work there in Ukraine. Now, it looks like Ukraine is going to pay about $786 million as a first step to defuse the gas spat. It looks like they're not going to pay the entire thing because they want to renegotiate and they want the discount rate for the rest of the gas. And this goes on to say that Ukraine said Friday that it ordered a $786 million payment to Russia in a first step toward paying off its gas debts, and another round of talks aimed at resolving the two countries' dispute over the gas prices. And they're going to have these talks on Monday. We'll have to see how this goes along. Now, NATO defense minister will discuss temporarily reinforcing forces in Poland. Poland is very nervous about Russia. They want more troops there. They want a buildup, and we'll have to see what happens in that area if NATO actually brings in more troops. Now, we understand that China and Russia, they're a little bit more advanced in their hypersonic missile program, and the United States really doesn't have one. And they're looking at this and they're saying that China's hypersonic missile program is a great threat to U.S. national security. So the House of Representatives has passed a $70 million project that will allow the U.S. Army to develop a hypersonic guided missile in the fiscal year in 2015. And this is like a rush job because they realize they need to start these wars. They realize the United States is a little lacking in the technology, and they need to get the same type of hypersonic type of missile program going. China and Russia are a little bit more advanced. They already have these programs. They already have these missiles. And the House report said the country has not yet invested in hypersonic weapon sufficiently compared to China and Russia, which have been increasing their ultra-high-speed weaponry. Now, what's very interesting, and we're going to go back to Ukraine right now, is that Ukrainian mercenaries who have fought alongside the militants in Syria are now participating in operations against pro-Russian protesters in southeastern Ukraine. So pretty much they took those same militants and they moved them that were fighting in Syria, and they moved them to Ukraine to help out. About 300 militants who have been fighting against the government of President Assad in Syria were involved in the military operation against the people of Ukraine in the Donetsk, the Slavansk, the Kharkov area. Amazing. So they're just moving people around. They're keeping the same people and just moving them around where they need them. Now the West, and when I say the West, I'm talking about the United States, the Central bankers, or people like to call them the Bilderbergers, the elites, the globalists. They're worried about the growing alliance between Iran, China, and Russia, and they're calling this the Iran-Russia-China arc. And they're very worried about this agreement between them. This is their first concern. They're also concerned about Russia's initiative to form the Eurasian Economic Union with Belarus and Kazakhstan, and all of this is on top of the Russian-China gas pipeline deal. And they're also worried about what's happening in the Middle East, and they're having the secret meeting of the Bilderberger Group, and they're worried about the Middle East, where that's completely falling apart, Ukraine, and all these deals going on, because this is a direct threat to the private Western central bank system, which could bring it down even faster if we continue on this path. And again, they realize this, they realize what's happening, and this is why you see the provoking happening all around the world. And all these military assets are being moved and put into place. Poland's asking for more troops, and all of this, again, is for World War III, because they realize they'll have to do something to cover up this economic collapse, because they do not want to be blamed for what is going to happen, because they, in their minds, believe they're going to start this system over once the Great War is done. And again, these people have a place to hide, and that is underground. The rest of us will be placed on the front lines and going to war. And this is their plan. This is what they're looking to do. And of course, when that event hits the United States and the lights go out, the financial system's brought to its knees, they're going to blame another country. They're going to convince the majority of Americans, Europeans, Australians, Canadians, the British, that yes, it was not us, it was them. We were on a path to recovery, and this is what they're going to use. And all of us are going to have to say, no, 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 we understand what's going on, and we're going to have to stand up and say, we are not going to war. If you like to go to war, you can send your family, your children, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, put them on the front line, and let's see how fast you maneuver to do this. Now, like we said in the beginning of this report, is the U.S. preparing some type of strike into Libya? And we understand that Jordan right now is having an exercise with a lot of military personnel. We realize that Syria is having an election coming up this week. We realize an assault ship has been sailed to Libya. It's off the coast with 1,000 Marines, where they have a launching pad in Italy to get right into Libya. The United States has ordered and put advisories into effect in Libya saying that people should leave, and we're seeing that other countries now are doing the same thing. Jordan's foreign ministry has become the latest country to tell its citizens to leave Libya as soon as possible and not to travel because of the deteriorating security situation. Where the U.S. State Department advised Americans also to leave. The Filipinos have advised this week by their governments that they should all leave. European countries, France, Spain, are all saying if anyone is in there, they also need to leave. So we can see that this is definitely building up. We saw this happen during August when they were preparing some type of strike. Again, we have to remember the puppet regime in Libya did put out a call to the international community asking for their help. The United States, of course, answered because they cannot let the people of Libya take back their country. If this happens, it would be like a domino effect across the Middle East, and this entire system would start falling apart rapidly, and they cannot let this happen. And this is why they're taking action right now and moving military assets into place. And I'm sure we're going to see more military assets start to move into this area. Now, we have a dual thing going on here. We have Libya with that assault ship. We have Syria, which they're planning some type of strike into Syria because of everything that we've talked about. And this could turn out to be an all type of strike they're going to use. And of course, they can say that, you know, Al-Qaeda hit the United States with some type of an event. It came from Syria. It came from inside of Libya. We need to go fully into these countries to get them. They brought our economy down to its knees. They They shut the lights off and the power off in many cities in the United States and in Europe. And all of this, you can see, is continually building up, and it's nonstop. Okay, now it looks like Anonymous is planning some type of cyber attack on the World Cup sponsors in Brazil. The hacker group Anonymous is preparing a cyber attack on corporate sponsors of the World Cup in Brazil to protest the lavish spending on the soccer games in a country struggling to provide basic services. And of course, the hackers are out there. We have already conducted late-night tests to see which of the sites are more vulnerable. Said the hacker, we have a plan of attack. This time, we are targeting the sponsors of the World Cup. And we know that Anonymous continually comes out and says they're going to cyber attack, and most of the time, really nothing happens. But we'll keep an eye on this and see how this occurs. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.